she was very smart, but women weren't allowed any place whatsoever, at any table except the dining room table. And she had been his confidant. She had been his supporter from the beginning, had found him and honed him to be what he was. She came from a strong political family in the South, and she was at the beginning much more politically savvy than he. He was distant and remote, and he had terrible depressive episodes early on in their marriage, and it was her insistence that he was brilliant, and that she would never let up on that and tell him, how brilliant he is and what he's going to do. And she had no doubt, she had never had any doubt that he was going to be president and he was going to change the world. And he did. An amazing, amazing artist, Joanna is. And we worked very, very closely because we wanted to have Mary's measurements. So we kept measuring my waist, and rarely will you hear an actress go, "Oh my goodness, my waist is an inch bigger, yes!" But that's what we would do. Well, do you know that Joanna went, and almost all of Mary's costumes are exact replicas of the clothes that she was able to find photographs of or paintings of. So many of those costumes, many of those things, including the final dress that you see Mary in, even though it's just ever so briefly when he's dying, is exactly a replica of what she had on. I am so enriched by having the opportunity to work so closely with him and Stephen. But from the time I got the role and it became released to the press, which was a few months after that, he and I started texting each other regularly, very regularly, but completely in character. It was very hard to do because you had to think of the dialect of the time, of how people spoke, and so I really had to work at it. And he would send me limericks, and he would say this or that, and we would just out of the blue something, and it was constant, and it began to build a small thread of intimacy. The person who taught him a great deal about orating, even though he was a magnificent speaker, was Mary. Stand up straight, you don't have the right thing on, and tried to coach him early in their lives together. It resonates so enormously on a world level about the difficulty, the messiness, the complicated nature of democracy, and how long it takes to really have it work, and how hard you have to work to keep it working. And that resonates all over the world right now, all over the world. And you have to want this noble notion of people governing themselves. You have to want it more than life. He's simply a magnificent director. I have been lucky enough to work with several really fine directors. Stephen is just as good as it gets, in my way of thinking. He's relentless, but he's willing to give up his own notion to go with another notion if he sees it. He's relentlessly detailed in seeing things that people don't know they're doing and say, do that, do that. He never stops. He doesn't sit back in his chair and just kind of forget the whole thing. He's always looking and thinking and seeing something else, some other way to shoot it, some other thing to offer an actor, some other notion, some other you know, idea. In Mary's life, it was important because she was the only real friend and confidant that she had, and Elizabeth Keckley was a seamstress. And when Mary got to D.C., when Mary got to Washington, she didn't have any proper clothes, or what Mary thought weren't proper clothes, because she wanted to be regal. She felt it was necessary to represent something. And so she asked around, and the finest seamstress around, they said, was Elizabeth Keckley. And so she hired Elizabeth Keckley. And, you know, Elizabeth Keckley at first was doing things for other people as well, and Mary didn't like that. She wanted working just for her. And so then slowly but surely, by the second term, Elizabeth Keckley and Mary were always together. He walks that fine line, and you do sense this older boy that has no place. You know, there's a great sadness about it, you know, as he tries to talk to his father, and his father's busy. And he's the only place. You know, Lincoln is so generous to every schmo that comes in the door, and the only one he's curt with is his son, and without even hesitating. The absolute exquisite talent of Tony Kushner. Unbelievable, exquisite talent of Tony Kushner. How he chose to reveal some of these things that I won't even say, instead of ways we've seen it before, deciding to reveal certain pieces of important history or thing in another way. And who he is, I mean, he was on the set every second. He just is stunning.